Hello, everyone. Today we're talking broadcasting terms. Now, when you're talking broadcasting, you have a lot of different key players. I'm going to focus on the ones who have a little more to do with media writing. The basically all of these people are have their own counterparts in TV as well as radio. Now, of course, your primary newscaster is going to be your anchor. They're going to be the ones who are at the desk. They present the majority of the stories, especially anything that's going to be breaking news, features, headlines, all that kind of stuff. That's going to be a job for your anchor. A reporter or MMJ is a multimedia journalist. The majority of reporters now do not get their own camera operators, they have to do everything themselves. That also includes taking photos, doing interviews, collecting background information, and posting all of it online for social media, as well as any web articles that need to be written. And so that means normally translating their work either to a web article or from a web article into a broadcasting format. Now, the producer, sometimes, depending on how large or small the station is or how they're set up, a producer can also be an anchor, or they might moonlight as an MMJ for whatever newscast they work on there. But most of the time, a producer is going to be the person collecting and writing the stories every day for a broadcast. They are the ones who are in charge of saying, this goes into my 6 o'clock news broadcast. Or if they're working on a morning show, for example, which is what I did most of the time, you are going to put together different interviews or special assignments for people, make sure that everyone stays on task and that you have everything slotted appropriately into your newscast. Now, all of those people work alongside the news desk. A news desk has a lot of different moving parts. Most of the time, it's people collecting information from different sources and rewriting that information for the web. That might also include any information from PR people at different areas. It, a lot of times the news desk nowadays includes someone from advertising or a social media coordinator, because they want to make sure they're covering all of their online bases. Now, of course, all of these people do work together because they want to create a broadcast that will make their audience continue watching or going on their web and social media accounts. And that's your Ron Burgundy news team. All right. Now, the easiest way to find out what's happening somewhere is to look at the headlines. Headlines are going to be an interview of the most recent, most relevant top stories. These are ones from the end of the morning newscast. They also usually have them at the top of a five, six, or 10 newscast as well. It'll be a very brief 1 or 2 sentence overview of a story, letting people know, hey, we have the latest information about how to get your COVID-19 vaccine, or whatever the story is. Now, let's take a look at how they formatted this.
Hi, Katie, and I'm Dave Baker. It's March 25th, and here are your latest headlines. Looking ahead to Monday, anyone.
Okay, so what they had here is they have him in what's called a monitor shot. This is a single anchor monitor. And he transitions from that with their KATC logo into a VO read. Now, this VO read is a combination probably of either information that the governor gave already, so probably from something from his most recent announcement about COVID. It's also going to include a kind of a mix of other video related to that subject.
COVID-19 vaccine. Governor Edwards making the announcement yesterday. He says they weren't expecting to get to this point so quickly, but are happy to be here. He also announced thousands of vaccines are making their way to the state. Starting Monday, there will be no more requirements to get the shot.
It doesn't matter about health condition, doesn't matter about occupation. 16 years.
Okay, so what they did there is the video read transitioned into your sound on tape, or the SOT, or sound bite is another term used for that. Now, listen again to how this was worded.
Starting Monday, there will be no more requirements to get the shot.
It doesn't matter about health condition, doesn't matter about occupation. 16 years and older will be the determining factor for eligibility.
Okay, so instead of writing a version identical to whatever Governor Edwards said, they use the transition of saying there won't be requirements, and then use the specific SOT where Edwards explains the requirements that are no longer needed.
Looking at the numbers in Region 4, which includes most of Acadiana, roughly 11% of the population is fully vaccinated.
Okay, so stop again. This is a graphic read. Graphics can function in a similar way to a video read, except here a lot of times you want to use graphics if you need a specific number or time or date, or you need to show a quote from a phone interview. That's another good reason to have a graphic on the screen instead.
Vaccinated. Lafayette Parish leading the region with 12%, while St. Martin has the lowest rate at 8%. Happening tomorrow, you can get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in Delcom from 8 until 3.
Okay, so what they did right there, since they had two graphics in a row, but one of them contained information about getting the vaccine and the other one was about statistics, they used a transition, which was in that case was happening tomorrow, stinger, into a 3-wipe. Each station has their own like logo wipe thing that it's called a wipe, but it's a transition. It's a type of transition, and you specify in your, whenever you write directions for your director or your graphics person, you're telling them what kind of transition you want to add if you're writing this for a newscast.
Crow Community Center, and organizers say they want your feedback.
And the same for the video as well. Sometimes you have an event coming up that's very important and you want to have video, but you wouldn't necessarily have enough of it on hand, so you can specify to the video editor, hey, I need video of X, Y, and Z, and they'll include it. Okay, now what they did here is they transitioned into a weather shot from a VO read. You don't necessarily need to know about that. Weather people do their own thing. They write their own stories and do their own stuff.
By tomorrow afternoon, and they'll stick around through the rest of the weekend as well.
Okay. Now for monitor shots. This is another monitor shot example, this time with 2 anchors. As you can see, they're on each side of the monitor showing the Doppler radar. When Hurricane Laura was about to make landfall. And obviously this was a very important story. And they needed to include not only the radar, but they wanted to have their weather person and basically another news person there to be able to explain to the public, hey, this is what's happening. You need to leave. These are the problems. Get out of the way of the hurricane. Now, part of this is also, so you have your monitor, you have your two anchors, and then you have your super on the bottom. These are also called lower thirds. Now, depending, it can either be 2 or 3 lines of text. In this case, they have the very top, which explains the overall theme. You'll use this when you have a lot of information to convey and you want to kind of connect everything together into a story. So they're using Tracking Laura, and their second line offers more information. What are we tracking right now? It's the latest on Hurricane Laura. And then at the bottom, how it's impacting Louisiana specifically. All right. Now, over the shoulder shots, a lot of times people will use them instead of a monitor shot to introduce a story or introduce a VO. If you have a longer 20-second VO or something, you can also use them whenever you don't have any video or you feel like taking the anchor off of the screen would be worse than having just a graphic up. As you can see on here, we have the anchor, and then over his outside shoulder, so it's the shoulder away from the desk, you have the WGNO logo.
Tonight's News in Brief is brought to you by Coors Premium Beer.
Good evening, everyone. Some French soldiers are the latest victims of a truck bombing in Lebanon. A truck filled with explosives today drove up in front of the Beirut headquarters of the French peacekeeping force. The driver got out and fled, and the truck blew up. At least 5
in this
were
case,
killed,
they
possibly 8.
obviously didn't have any
The death
video
toll from
of
nearly a
that.
week of storm and bone-chilling cold has now reached 47 in the Midwest. Temperatures rose somewhat today, but a new cold wave with heavy snow is heading for the Ohio Valley tonight.
So for this specific segment, for whatever reason, they just didn't have video of any of these news stories. From what I understand, this News in Brief is very similar to give you a version of headlines, but it's for more international or national news. But as you saw, the over-the-shoulder graphic changed with his stories.
Filled with explosives today drove up in front of the Beirut headquarters of the French peacekeeping force. The driver got out and fled, and the truck blew up. At least 5 were killed, possibly 8. The death toll from nearly a week
in their
of
case,
storm
they
and
also changed the
bone-chilling
background
cold has now reached
to make
47
it
in the Midwest.
kind of
Temperatures rose
match
somewhat
with
today,
their
but a new
over-the-shoulder.
cold wave with heavy snow is heading for the Ohio Valley tonight. Egypt's foreign minister has told President Reagan, if the
Now,
Israelis pull
obviously,
back
this is from the
their positions
80s.
in Lebanon,
They look very different today, but it's one way to keep your anchor on the set and on the camera while still offering something other than their face for people to see. And also, normally the anchor would read off of the teleprompter more, not necessarily off of their desk. Okay, a stand-up when a reporter is on camera. So most of the time, a stand-up is going to be something that a producer or the news desk director might request in a specific package or feature story. It's going to show the reporter at the location interacting with whatever their topic is.
The new airport terminal opens November 6th. The old one, a lot easier to get to, but this one, not so much. Don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly how to get there.
Okay, so one other thing, quick mention. If you listen to how she's saying everything. You can tell in broadcast news, everything is supposed to be immediate. It's now, new, next. You're supposed to focus, instead of using past tense like you do for traditional news writing, you're going to write in the present or in the future for the majority of your stories. Sometimes it can make the language a little awkward, especially when you're trying to focus on shortening your sentences and writing more for people to listen versus actually reading
The new
something.
airport terminal opens November 6th. The old one, a lot easier to get to, but this one, not so much. Don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly how to get there.
Just like the old terminal, you'll hop on I-10 West, but this time you'll pass up the old access road and get off on Loyola Drive.
Okay, so in her version, she used her stand-up as an intro, and then she had a video camera taping her route to the airport and used that for her VO. And of course, another good thing with broadcasting is you can add little audio cues whenever you need them. Okay, now a tag. It's normally additional information you want to add outside the package. Occasionally, it can be something you're adding into the package. It kind of depends on what you need. For this specific video, let's get started.
A lot of us have been spending a lot of time at home
So
over the past year.
they're
And if you've
having a
noticed that
two
the
anchor
scale has
toss
been creeping
into a
upward,
package
you're not alone.
by
Yes, it
another
is. I
member of their
kinda
news
know
team.
why. A lot of us are gaining the pandemic pounds, so we asked, why is this happening? Meg Ferris explains to us in tonight's Weight Loss Wednesday.
The pandemic is taking a toll on Americans' waistlines. An American Psychological Association survey finds nearly
Now, for those of you who
two-thirds of
are-
us had an undesired weight change in the last year.
For those of you who are into advertising, the little transition you saw just now is something a lot of news advertising departments work on. And they'll also kind of develop logos for the station and do other stuff.
To get out there and to do things.
Are you seeing that more than normal?
Yes, that is coming up more than normal.
LSU.
Okay, so the reason I brought that part up for a second is so you can hear, in her case, instead of just having her interviewee speaking by themselves, she incorporated the entire video from the interview and reframed it so people at home would understand that they were Skyping or on Zoom or something with each other for this interview. Okay. And then she has some video, other video, blah, 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 other stuff, graphics, talking about how everyone gained like 60 pounds last year.
For Weight Loss Wednesday, I'm Meg Ferris.
I ate a lot of Pop-Tarts at the beginning of this thing, and I don't even know why. Well, the survey also finds that about half of Americans feel uneasy about adjusting to in-person interaction once the pandemic ends. And that was in both people who are vaccinated and people who are not.
All right, so what you just heard was a tag out. In this case, it was given by the anchor instead of the person who made the package. That's another technique that happens a lot. She added additional information relevant to the story, but not necessarily something that would have been included in the package report. Okay, now graphics, of course, can be abbreviated GFX. Graphics may be used in place of video or in conjunction with it, as we saw in the headline video at the beginning. And this could also be, instead of a graph or percentages or whatever. It can also be still images. A lot of times for memorial services, they'll have a picture of whoever died, and they'll have the information about where to attend, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, Nat Sound is another great item you can add into a report. Obviously, since you guys are just writing, you aren't going to have it, but if you know whatever you covered is something where Nat Sound would possibly be available, you're welcome to add it into your script. It can either start a script, so you can have a nat rolls where you have the nat sound, and then after 2 or 3 seconds it fades out, and then the person starts reading whatever the video is. You can also use it underneath whatever audio you have, or like whatever the anchor's reading, or you can include it in a shot from someone at the scene.
Well, that weather is to blame for a sewer line break in Jefferson Parish that created quite a scene, spewing sewage wastewater into the air and on the streets for most of the day.
So
it happened along Napoleon Avenue.
Slightly different package toss in this case. They're doing a live toss. So what this guy did is he recorded a package earlier in the day, and that's how it usually works. I mean, a lot of times you came up with your idea because you want to keep news fresh. You start in the morning, you find your interviews, do your research, record, get all your stuff together, and you have to be ready by 6 o'clock. And in this case, he had to be ready at the scene, and wearing his Delcom Reeboks.
There's absolutely not. Here we are more than 12 hours after all of this began, and you can see over my shoulder here, water still gushing up from under Napoleon Avenue, and it's going to stay that way throughout the night because there are no crews out here to try and get this under control. This caused a lot of aggravation today for business owners and folks who live nearby.
Okay. So what they did was it was a toss from the studio to the live shot, and then he tossed to the package that he recorded earlier. You had Nat Sound behind him in the shot, obviously, because you have all of the machinery working and the water gushing out of the road. And then, as you'll hear in here, he also has some more behind the people he interviews.
Bill Brakel is used to fixing messes, but the one Wednesday is beyond his scope of work.
This morning, it's about 8 o'clock, all of a sudden the water started gushing up there.
That water is from a sewer line that busted, creating a geyser in the middle of Napoleon Avenue. In his 50 years in business, Brakel has never dealt with anything like this.
When they built the street, I put up with a little trouble for a few months, but I don't know what they're going to do with this.
The parish blames heavy rains from Tuesday, creating high pressure in the line. Because of ongoing repairs, the point where the line busted was only being held up with power.
Okay, so you get the idea, including audio of the water gushing behind the people. Sometimes you need to include extra microphones to make sure you pick up that and you're able to pick up your interview. No, there's one more.
Side streets or whatever to get in. One of those side streets is Argonne, which Stephanie Matrenga lives on.
You'll see them either turn here or they'll travel to Clearview. So we just have constant traffic down the residential street.
Matrenga.
As you heard, they were using background traffic audio as a Nat Sound to show how much of a disruption it is in this woman's neighborhood when all all the cars
says
pass.
that is creating a problem.
It's concerning when nobody uses that stop sign to begin with and all the kids play on the streets.
Back on Napoleon, as crews work to fix both the sewer line and
Okay. Now, another type of sound, of course, is your sound on tape, your sound bites. Now, you don't have to start a story with the anchor or the reporter reading something. You can also start it with nat sounds or with your SOTs. In this case, they used a SOT as the beginning of their package.
Mardi Gras, of course, just around the corner. And if you haven't had your fill of king cake just yet, Rick Porche has just the thing for your sweet tooth.
So go ahead and put one egg in at a time. King cake is a very, very rich dough. This is my second
So that's
class.
whoever
So I think
interviewed.
people are excited to have something to do that reminds them of the Mardi Gras season.
And he also
It may
has
be
the
the only
great
thing that's
sound
normal this
from
Mardi Gras
the mixers
fun way
in
to
there
get
as
your
well.
stress out, needing some dough.
With balls and parades canceled, what better way to get your pre-Lenten calories than by making your own?
Okay. Now I hope that gives you a little start for your VOSOTs. I'm going to go into a little more detail in the next video. And if you have any other questions, review the assignment, review your textbook. And if you're still confused, send me a text, send me an email, and I'll try to answer you as soon as I can.